Morning.
Yosef, it's so wonderful to see you in Yerushalayim.
Yeah.
I'm hoping.
Are those people walking away from you?
Yes, I have to
Still
admit.
trying to figure this thing out. I was talking, okay, finally, Baruch Hashem, we'll deal with that tomorrow. I don't know what happened. I couldn't get into Zoom. Baruch Hashem, we got in there. Okay, we're on Daf Chaf Aleph Amud Beis. We said that there are three shittas about whether the oils and the wicks that can't be used on Shabbos, whether they can be used on Hanukkah. And we paskin like the third shitta, and we'll read that third shitta because the Gemara is now going to have questions on that third shitta, which is the halacha shitta. So that's the one we're going to concentrate on. 2 lines on the top of the Gemara, Chafala from a base. Amar Rab Zera, Amar Rav. Psilais ushmanim she'amru chachamim ein madlikim behem b'Shabbos, madlikim behem b'Chanukah, bein b'chol bein b'Shabbos. Rab Zera said the name of Rav Masna or in the name of Rav. The wicks and the oils that the Chacham said you can't use on Shabbos because they flicker, you can use them on Hanukkah, Hanukkah weekday and Hanukkah Shabbos. Now watch what happens here. We have a kula, and then from the kula we're going to get an underlying chumrah. This is a very interesting sequence of events. Rav says that the oils and the wicks that you cannot use on Shabbos, you can use Hanukkah. Is that a strict shita or a lenient shita? It's a lenient shita. If you can use it on Shabbos, you can use it Hanukkah. Hanukkah, Shabbos, and Hanukkah during the week. So without going into his logic, we have a lenient shita. You can't use it on Shabbos, but you can use it on Hanukkah. So Gemara says, my time at the Rav. What's the reason for Rav? Kasava Rav holds Kavsa Ein Zakukla. First of all, if Baruch, good morning, how are you? First, Kavsa Ein Zakukla. If the Hanukkah light goes out, even within the half an hour, you don't have to go relight it. So therefore, during the weekday, if the wicks, the oil flicker and they go out, you don't have to relight it. So I don't have to worry about that. So far, so good. And you're not allowed to use benefit from the light of the Hanukkah menorah. Therefore, on Shabbos, since you're not going to be allowed to read, for example, at the Hanukkah candles, you're not going to be able to use the Hanukkah candles for any purpose. I don't have to worry that you may shake it to adjust it. So look what happened here. Because Rav is lenient and says you can use the flickering oils on Shabbos, that's a leniency. His underlying reason is a chumrah. You cannot use the Ner Hanukkah to read. The other sheet is held, you can use the Ner Hanukkah to read, and therefore you can't use those oils on Shabbos. So the shita leads to an opposite logic. In the case of Rav, he says, sure, the oils and the wicks that cause flickering, sure, you can use it on Shabbos for Hanukkah, a big leniency. But what underlies that leniency? A big chumrah. You can't read or use the light of Hanukkah, and that's why you're allowed to use the flickering lights. So it's a kula in allowing you to use those oils and wicks, but it's a chumrah in the sense that you can't benefit from that light. So the Gemara then says, we read this last week, Amru Rabbana Kamei da Abaye Mishmei de Rav Yirmiyah v'lei Kibla. The Chachamim, Abaye's Talmidim told Abaye that the reason, the logic for Rav, they said it over the name of Rav Yirmiyah, excuse me, and Abaye did not accept Rav Yirmiyah's reasoning. Rav Yirmiyah said, this is the logic of Rav, and Abaye didn't accept it. Ki asa Ravin, Rabbanim Kameda by Mishmei Rav Yochanan. Ravin came from Bavel, And Ravin came to Bavel, and he said to Abaye, I heard from Rabbi Yochanan in Eretz Yisrael that the reason for Rav is you can use the wicks and the oils that you can't use on Shabbos, you can use on Hanukkah, Shabbos, and weekday, because if it goes out, you don't have to worry about it, and you're not allowed to use the Hanukkah light for your benefit. The Kibla. And now all of a sudden Abaye said, I accept the reasoning. Originally, he didn't accept it in the name of Rabbi Yirmiyah because he didn't hold at that time that Rabbi Yirmiyah was big enough to be able to explain the reasoning of Rav. When he heard later Rabbi Yochanan, the great Rabbi Yochanan he said, I accept it now. To which Abaye then said himself, Izakai, if I would have been Zoicha, Gamirta l'shmaite meikara, I would have accepted this reasoning earlier when it was said in the name of Rabbi Yirmiyah. Halavai, I would have accepted it earlier. What's the difference? What's the difference? He didn't accept it in the name of Rabbi Yirmiyah, and maybe a month, a year later, someone said Rabbi Yochanan said the same thing, and Abaye said, oh, Rabbi Yochanan said the same thing, I accept it. So then Abaye said, woe to me, so to speak, if I should have accepted it right away. What Mazeh Mishaneh? So Abaye said, V'hagomra, he did learn it. Nafkamin l'gir sadianku. So the difference is, the earlier you can learn something, the younger you are when you can learn something, the better off you are because that learning remains with you much longer. Okay, let's read a little more Gemara.
Could we say also that he would have paskened differently? How
do I do this? Why can't I hear people?
So I'll write it.
Is everyone unmuted?
Yes. Yes, I am.
Yosef, are you unmuted?
Yes, I'm unmuted.
I'm unmuted also.
Perhaps.
All right, okay. Yosef, you want to type a chat?
Yeah, because you're not hearing. Perhaps.
Okay. In all likelihood, in terms of halacha, Abaye continued. The halacha is like Rav. We have three shittas here. We have the shitta of Rav Huna, we have the shitta of Rav Chisda, and we have the shitta of Rav. Halachically speaking, for all intent and purposes, Abaye knew the halacha is going to be like Rav. What the underlying reason was brought to Abaye's attention in the name of Rabbi Yirmiyah. That underlying reasoning is what he didn't accept. And I'll give you an example. The halacha is, Tosfos makes this point, the halacha, how do we know the halacha is going to be like Rav? So Tosfos brings different proofs that the halacha is like Rav. But let's take a look at if you take a look at Chaf Aleph Amud Aleph, Rav Huna was the most strict. Rav Huna said that oils and wicks that you have to make like a little chart. Rav Huna said that the oils and wicks that you can't use on Shabbos, you can't use on Hanukkah at all, period. Rav said the oils and the wicks you can't use on Shabbos, you can use on Hanukkah. Extremes. In the middle, we had Rav Chisda. Rav Chisda said that the oils and the wicks that you can't use on Shabbos, you can use during the weekday of Hanukkah, but you can't use Shabbos Hanukkah. So we already have Rav Chisda in the middle, who's already permitting the oils and the wicks not during the oils and the wicks you can't use on Shabbos, he's permitting during the week. So the Tosfos is going to make a cheshbon that we know the halacha is like Rav. The question became, what is the reasoning of Rav? That Abaye didn't accept from Rav Yirmiyah, but he accepted it later from Rabbi Yochanan. Okay. Now the Gemara has a question, Chafala from its base.
V'raminhu.
12 lines from the top, the last word on the line, Varminhu. I have a contradiction. Mitzvasa, Mishatishka Chama, Achatichla Regel Mashuk. We learned that the mitzvah of Hanukkah licht is Mishatish Mitzvasa. The mitzvah is, remember we talked about this last week, what is the mitzvah of lighting Hanukkah candles? Is it lighting? And once it's kindled, you finish the mitzvah. And whether it lasts the full half an hour or not is irrelevant to the mitzvah. It's nice. It should last a half an hour. And if it blew out during the half an hour, it's nice to relight it. But in terms of the mitzvah is done at the kindling. Or is the mitzvah not completed until the whole half hour is up? So we just proved that Rav says that, and that's the halacha, the oils and the wicks that you can't use on Shabbos, you can use on Hanukkah during the week and on Shabbos Hanukkah. Now, why does he hold that you can use the oils and the wicks that flicker? Why can't you use it on Hanukkah during the week? Because Rav says, it'll flicker. So what? It'll flicker, it'll go out. You're still yaitz of the mitzvah, because the mitzvah is the kindling. I don't care if it goes out later. I don't care if it goes out later. It's called kavsa. It went out. Ein zokukla. You're not responsible for it. So Rav holds kavsa, ein zokukla. You're not responsible for it if it goes out. Okay. So what's the mitzvah? The mitzvah is the kindling. I don't have to make sure it stays on for a half hour. That is Rav, and that is the halacha. So Gemara says, for minu, mitzvasa, the mitzvah of Hanukkah, mishatishka hachama, that the Hanukkah lit should remain lit from sunset. Now this is going to cause a whole vikuach in halacha, which Yemei Hashem will get to. What does the word mishatishka hachama mean? Does it mean shkia? Does it mean the beginning of Shkia? The end of Shkia? Does it mean Tzeis HaKochavim, which is how we paskin? We want enough oil or wick in there for how long? To last 30 minutes after Tzeis HaKochavim. So Mishatishka Chama here is a tricky lashon. When we talk about Shkia, we talk about sunset, not nightfall. Right. But it says here the mitzvah of Ner Hanukkah is mishatishka chama, from sunset achatichla regel minashul, until there are no people walking in the marketplace. The Gemara will talk about in a few lines what that means. But that's what we call the half hour. The half hour is from nightfall until people are no longer walking in the marketplace. Okay. But what do those words mean? Mitzvasa, the mitzvah is that the Hanukkah licht should be lit from Shkias Hachama until people stop walking in the marketplace. What does that sound like to you? If the lights burned out before that period of time, what do you have to do?
You have to relight it.
You have to relight it. It says mitzvasa. The mitzvah is to remain lit from sunset until people stop walking through the marketplace. For us, that means 30 minutes. So it says the mitzvah is that the Hanukkah licht should remain lit for 30 minutes. That's opposite of what Rav said. That's the opposite of how we paskin. Rav said, as long as you have enough oil in there, I don't care if it goes out within the 30 minutes. So Gemara asks, Varminu, I have a contradiction. Mitzvasa, the mitzvah, mishatishka hachama, from sunset, achetikla regel mashuk, until the people stop walking in the marketplace. My love, the Gemara says, what does this mean? the ikavsa, if it went out, hadamadlikla. You have to go light it again. This is a contradiction to Rav. Loi. The Gemara says no. That's not what this means. And the Gemara is going to give two terutzim here that are very noigea la'alacha for us. The Gemara first says, Loi. The Eloi adlik madlik. This means, the Gemara says, listen to the way the Gemara is reading the words. There are so many times we read words and we don't realize that the very words can mean two different things. So we read the words. The mitzvah is it should remain, and I'm adding now the word remain because it doesn't say that. The words are mitzvasa mishatishka hachama achetikla regel manashuk. The words are the mitzvah of Hanukkah is from sunset till people stop walking in the shuk. The Gemara in its kasha and Lubling to explain the kasha said the mitzvah is that the light should remain lit from sunset until people stop walking in the shuk. And now it's a kasha on Mav. The Gemara says, Lubling, why did you add the word remain? Just read the words. The mitzvah of Ner Hanukkah is from sunset until people stop walking in the shuk. That means it's in that 30 minutes that you're supposed to light. Somebody will come and ask you, when can I start lighting Ner Hanukkah and make a bracha? Can I do it plag mincha? Can I do it in the afternoon? When does the mitzvah start? So people ask you, for example, when am I yotze the mitzvah of eating matzah the night of the 15th? Let's say I'll give you, here's a good example. We know we can bring in Shabbos early, not this time of year. If you bring in Shabbos early this time of the year, it's like 3 o'clock in the afternoon. But on those long Fridays, nightfall is 8 o'clock. And you go to an early minyan at 6 o'clock. Can you bring in Shabbos early? 100%. There's a mitzvah to eat 3 sudas on Shabbos. So you come home from your early mincha minyan, 7 o'clock, and the sun is shining and people are still driving. You make kiddush. You're making kiddush for Shabbos, and it's still daylight outside. You eat your challah and you eat your sud, it's still daylight outside. Are yotze the sud of Shabbos? 100% yotze the sud of Shabbos. You can bring in Shabbos early. Okay. Yontif. Can you bring in Yontif early? 100% you can bring in Yontif early. Now let's go to Pesach. It's the first night. You want to bring in Yontif early, you have this great idea. My kids keep on falling asleep at the Seder. Nightfall is 8 o'clock. I'm going to make an early Pesach minyan. We're going to daven 6:30, and we'll be finished 7:30, and we're going to start the Seder. And we're going to make the Seder. By the time you make the Seder, it turns out everyone's eating matzah and maror before nightfall. Are you yotze the mitzvah of achilas matzah?
No.
The answer is no. So why are you yotze Seudah Shabbos by bringing in Shabbos early, and you're not yotze matzah by bringing in Pesach early? And the answer is you have to eat the Seudah Shabbos on Shabbos. You have to eat matzah the night of Pesach, not on Pesach. You have to eat matzah the night of Pesach. It says, ba'erev toichlu matzahs. So if you bring in Shabbos early, it's Shabbos, you can eat a Suda. If you bring in Pesach early, it's still not night. You can't eat the matzah. So we have all these questions. When does the mitzvah start? You wake up in the morning on Sukkot, and you're so eager to shake that lulav and esrig that it's still dark outside. It's 3 o'clock in the morning, and you say, I can't wait. I've been waiting a whole year to make a shechiyonu on my lulav and esrig. I'm going to shake my lulav and esrig at 3 o'clock in the morning. Can you do it? You're yotze the mitzvah. You're not yotze the mitzvah. It's a bracha levatol. So we always have a question. When is the start time of a mitzvah? And when is the end time of a mitzvah? What's the earliest time I can read Kriya Shema? What's the latest time I can read Kriya Shema? So the Gemara says, Lubli, The words are the mitzvah of Hadlakas Ner Hanukkah is from sunset until people stop walking in the shuk. Lubling, why did you add the word remain lit? That's all this is telling you is when does the mitzvah start and when does the mitzvah end? It says the mitzvah is from sunset. In other words, at sunset, you can make the bracha and light. Any time during that 30 minutes until people leave, until people stop walking through the shuk, during that half hour, you can light your Hanukkah candles. You can't light before that, and you can't light after that. If you miss that half an hour, according to this teretz in the Gemara, let's make believe that when Hanukkah comes and Me'at Hashem with Mashiach Tzidkenu, it'll be here before. Let's make believe that at nightfall, make believe nightfall is 5:30. What's a half an hour after that? 6 o'clock.
6 o'clock.
According to the teretz in the Gemara, any time between 5:30 and 6, you're allowed to make a bracha and light Hanukkah candles. You can't light before and you can't light after. You lost the mitzvah. If you come home after 6 o'clock, you don't light candles anymore. We don't paskin like this. There's chumras like this, but we'll see in Yom Shem Taisus. The first teretz of the Gemara is, what was the question? Rav said, Kovsa ein zakuk lo. If it goes out in the middle half, in that half an hour, you don't have to relight it. How can you say you don't have to relight it?
You actually.
It says the mitzvah is from nightfall until people stop walking in the shuk. What does that sound like? It has to remain lit that whole half an hour. Everyone says, no, it's not a kasha. It doesn't have to stay lit the whole half hour. That's not what we're talking about, how long it has to be lit. What we're talking about is when can you start lighting and when's the end time for lighting. Start time is shkia, end time is that half an hour of tifla regel menashuk. That's teretz number one. The chiddush for us now is, if we stick to this teretz, then bizman hazeh, a half an hour after shkia or tzeis, depending on how we're going to define that, a half an hour after that, you lose the mitzvah. You cannot light Hanukkah candles with a bracha after that half hour. That's this first sheet. Inami, the Gemara has another teretz, which is the one we've been plugging in. Lishiura. That's all the Gemara is talking about is a shear. The what does it say? The mitzvah of Hanukkah is from shkia until no one's walking in the marketplace. It doesn't mean it has to be lit that whole half an hour. It means that at the beginning when you light, there has to be enough oil or wick that it can last that amount of time. L'shiura, the shear. What's the shear? Somebody will ask you, how much oil and wick do I need to put in there when I light? Does it have to have enough oil to last for the whole night? Does it have to have enough oil to last for 3 hours? How much oil do I need to put in there? The answer is enough oil from shkia till people stop walking in the shuk. We call that the 30 minutes. So how much oil and wick do I need to put in there? 30 minutes worth. What happens if it goes out during that 30 minutes? You don't have to relight it. So the Gemara has two terutzim. You asked me a question. Rav said that the oil and the wick that flicker on Shabbos, you can still use them on Hanukkah during the week. And if they flicker and they go out, I don't care on Hanukkah. How can you say that? It says the mitzvah is from shkia until people leave the shuk, which sounds like that's how long it has to last. And you have to relight it. The answer is you don't have to relight it. So what does it mean? One of two things. It either means that when do you start and when can you finish? It means the earliest time is shkia and the latest time is when the people stop walking in the market. After that, you can't light anymore. You lose the mitzvah. That's the first teretz. The second teretz is, no. It's not talking about that you have to keep on relighting it for the 30 minutes. It's just telling you that that's the amount of oil and wick you have to put in there to last the 30 minutes. And therefore, there's no kasha on Rab. So the halacha remains, oils and wicks that flicker that can't be used on Shabbos can be used on Hanukkah, Shabbos Hanukkah, and weekday Hanukkah. Kovsa, ein zakuk la. If it burns out during the 30 minutes, you do not have to relight it. The mitzvah starts at Shkia and ends at the point where people don't walk in the shuk, which means the 30 minutes. And how much oil and wick do you have to put in there when you light it? Enough to last 30 minutes. Okay. So what happens if a person puts in, he lights it perfectly, right at Shkia. He lights right at Shkia with the best olive oil in the world, but he only put enough oil or wick in there that it can burn for 22 minutes. He's not Yaitz in the midst. Even if it burns the whole 22 minutes, not Yaitz in the midst.
No.
But what happens if somebody puts enough oil and wick in there to last 30 minutes and it blows out 10 seconds after he lights it? He's Yaitz in the midst. What happens if somebody puts in enough oil and wick, the best oil and wick, but he lights outside, like our manicure is in Eretz Yisrael. He lights outside, and he doesn't put in one of the glass boxes, or the glass boxes is cracked, or he puts it in a place where basically it's reasonable to believe it's going to blow out. He's got 30 minutes of oil and 30 minutes of wick, and he puts in a place where potentially it can blow out under normal circumstances. Not Yaitz in the midst. Okay, here we have a little tomorrow ned. We're going to take a look at Tosfos. What do we do bisman hazeh? Is the 30-minute rule in effect? Why did they make this rule of 30 minutes? The reason Chazal made this rule of 30 minutes, it's from, listen to what the time is, from Shkia until people stop walking in the shuk. Where did they come up with this idea? What's the reason, the underlying reason for lighting their Hanukkah?
Two
words. Parsume Nisa. We want to publicize, we want the whole world to know what Hashem did for the Jewish people in the time of the second Beis HaMikdash. We want everyone to know that when the whole world tried to extinguish the Jewish light, the Rabbanu Shalom made sure that the Jewish light cannot be extinguished. We want the whole world to know that. That's the whole purpose of lighting Hanukkah candles. Parsume Nisa. There came a problem with Parsume Nisa because Goyim used to kill Jews when they saw Hanukkah menorahs outside, which is where you're supposed to light. We'll see that in the Gemara. So Mepnei HaSakona, when things got dangerous, people were permitted to light in their homes. Okay. But when everything was gishmak and good, you lit your Hanukkah candles outside. Why? Parsume Nisa. I want the whole world to know. How will you let the whole world know? By lighting 2 o'clock in the morning? You're going to take your menorah, put it outside 2 o'clock in the morning. Who's going to see your menorah at 2 o'clock in the morning? Everyone's asleep. When's the biggest hustle bustle going on in the streets, especially in those days? People had to leave. You couldn't work. Once it got dark without electricity, you went home. So when's the hustle bustle in the street where everybody's going to see Hanukkah menorahs lit? From about nightfall until no one's left in the marketplace. What does that mean, no one's left in the marketplace? Everybody's left and walked home already. The Gemara is going to fine-tune this. But what is the point of this 30 minutes? It's not Stam Chazal to say 30 minutes. It's an approximation by us. But what Chazal did was they said, when you light Hanukkah candles, the mitzvah is Parsume Nisa, Pirsum, publicize the miracle. When can you publicize the miracle? When people are in the street. When are people in the street? when the day ends and everybody's going home from work and the marketplace is empty. Once the marketplace is empty, what does that tell you? Everybody's back home. If everybody's back home, what are you lighting for now? Nobody's going to see it. So Chazal said the mitzvah of lighting their Hanukkah is from Shkia, whatever that means, as we said. We're going to get to that. Until there's nobody left walking, Tichla Regel Marashuk. There's nobody walking in the marketplace, and therefore there's no Parsumei Nisa. So we're going to come into one of the most, broadest sugyas in Hanukkah. If you're lighting indoors, can you light after that half an hour? According to one answer in the Gemara, what does that half hour mean? What does that 30 minutes mean? It's the earliest time to light. You can't light before Shkia, and you cannot light after the 30 minutes. You lose the mitzvah after the 30 minutes. So that was applicable in those times when they lit outside, because who are you trying to show the miracle to? People in the street. So you lit outside. If you're going to light outside after the 30 minutes, you accomplish nothing and you lost the mitzvah. But what happens when the mitzvah moved indoors because of the sakana? So who are you lighting for now indoors? Who do you want to teach the miracle to? Your wife, your children, your grandchildren. Who's the Parsumei Nisa for? Your family. So if it's for your family, what happens if your family doesn't get together till 9 o'clock at night? This one is here, and this one is there, and this one is here, and this one missed the bus. What do? It's 5 minutes to 6. There's only 5 minutes left to the 30-minute time. Do you just light and forget your family? Or your wife calls you and says, you know what? We missed the 4:17. We were at the coastal. We missed the 4:17. We're not going to be home for 45 minutes. You wait for your wife and children? Or do you light and say, no, I can't wait. There's only 5 minutes left of the half an hour. Tosfos is going to discuss that. And this is a very large subject in Shulchan Aruch. If you're lighting indoors, can you light after that half an hour? The half an hour may have been something applicable to when they lit outside. And during that half an hour, people were walking back and forth during that half an hour, and there was Parsumei Nisa. But once you move the Hanukkah candles inside, no one outside is going to see it anyway. So that half an hour may not be relevant. What's relevant? When your wife and your children are home. Ad Kedei Kach, there's a question in Shulchan Aruch. The husband misses the bus. The husband calls his wife at 5 to 6 and says, there's only 5 minutes left to light Hanukkah candles, and I'm not going to be home for an hour. What do? Should the wife light for him? Or should she wait for him to come home? All these questions that come up when you light inside. Baruch Hashem, we're back in Eretz Yisrael. B'li sakana, Baruch Hashem, we can light outside, and a lot of these shilas are not necessarily relevant. There are people in Eretz Yisrael that still kept the minhag of lighting indoors for whatever reason. You know how hard it is for Jews to change anything. So if that's what we did in Poland 400 years ago, that's what we're going to do in Eretz Yisrael 400 years later. We understand a lot of Jews that have this mentality that while they live in Eretz Yisrael, they actually are in Warsaw. So people have difficulty with the challenge of, oh, something changed, and the halacha actually addresses this. Okay, so we're going to take a look at that lineda tomorrow. Tosfos talks about the ramification of the menorah moving from outside in golus because of sakana to indoors because of the golus. Okay.